Hello everyone, my name's Ollie. Welcome to Magic Hands Hobbies. This time we'll be looking at painting Ghazghkull Thraka. I probably pronounced that completely wrong. The Orc Warlord from Warhammer 40,000. I love orcs for the way that they kit bash their contraptions and weapons, but this parasuit that is worn by one of their most powerful warlords seems far more purposeful, less constructed of bits and bobs found on wreckages on the battlefield. My instant reaction to seeing this awesome model was to draw inspiration from one of my all-time favorite movies, Aliens, in which one of the main characters, Ripley, uses a powered suit called a paraloader to fight the Queen Alien. The main colour of the loader is yellow, and as we all know, bright garish colours suit the orcs so well. I just felt it was the right thing to do. So come and join me as I paint this wonderfully sculpted suit of carnage. See you in a bit.
So I've already built the model, although it's been done in separate pieces. I don't want to paint the whole thing in one go. It makes things very difficult to paint underneath, for example, the backpack, so I've made that removable. I've also kept the head and main jaw removable as well, as you can see here. They will eventually get glued in. I considered magnetising it and having alternative heads, but decided not to. Same with the effects coming out of the gun. I've got the chain of bullets flying out of the side and the smoke coming out to just show that it's just been fired. Might consider putting a glow effect on the end of the gun when it comes to it, but yeah, we'll see what happens. Just mucking about with the base. I've already glued the main little piece of kit that comes with the actual model itself, and glue that down to the base. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with finishing the base off. So let's have a look. Right, so this sand mix gravel that I've got here, this actually I think came from one of the original Games Workshop modelling kits. I can't recall, I've had it for so long. Very rarely use it, but considering I want to get stone and dirt on the base of this to try and match the texture of the plastic that's already supplied, I thought it'd be a good idea. So I've put some standard PVA glue down. The yellowing, don't worry about that, that's just because I had some pigment left there from a previous work that I was doing. I've placed some of the Citadel plastic skulls down. They haven't dried, they're still in position, and then I've covered the whole thing in the basing material, tap off the extra, and then whilst it's still wet, just use something to poke things out of the way. Next, what I'm doing is watering down the PVA, and I'm going to dab that all over. The reason why I'm dabbing it is I don't have a spray bottle to start with, but it allows me to keep control of where the sand and the grit is going. Just try and make sure that none of it's gone up inside the eye sockets of the skulls, and just generally push things around to make it how you want. Here's a close-up of where I've got to. Anyway, on to the painting. I've base coated the models, the main part of the model. Now I'm wearing a glove because that's what I was using to hold the model at the time. You can see my fingertips are covered in black. I actually make the mistake of keeping this glove on whilst painting main colours. The problem with that, it actually took some of the paint off of my gloves and put it onto the finished paintwork, which is not good, but it's barely visible. So I'm dry brushing the metals, starting with the darkest, and I'm doing this all over the suit. And the idea is that I am not going to use a chipping medium, and I'm not going to use like a sponge to put chipping on it. I'm doing the metal underneath, and then I'm painting what would be the paint of the metal work on top.
I just want to get caught up in this life, I'm crazy, I'm bad.
Using various different types of metals, including copper and tin, and then I'm going to apply a black wash, in this case it's Nuln Oil, over the whole thing. This is a recipe that I tend to use on all of my metals, especially if I want it to look grungy. I'll put a black wash over absolutely everything, and then selectively go over with a brown wash, which is what I'm doing here, just dabbing it into places where, just to give the impression that it is rust or starting to rust, getting grungy, maybe covered in grime and dirt. One thing you want to make sure is just don't let it pool. If you let it pool, it can ruin the entire effect. So this is the shoulder pad done along the back. Careful not to drop it. And then I like it. So now I'm going to move on and do the whole body. This is what it looks like. Now I quite like this effect, and could be quite happy to actually leave it like that and just to chuck a few highlights on there, paint a few panels, job done. But the intention here is to paint it yellow. So I'm going to move on to the selection of yellow paints that I've got, starting with a darker yellow, which is Filthy Brown. I think it's Filthy Brown, we'll soon find out in a second. Filthy Brown, there we go. By Game Colour. I really like this, it's got good coverage, good pigmentation, and what's quite important is not to do brush strokes. You want to be stippling this. The reason why you want to do that, you don't want brush strokes seen, but you're also trying to build up the paint as if it has been worn away, so it's not going to be a perfect layer. So you just want to make sure maybe a couple of coats to cover the paint, make sure that you're actually getting good coverage. Switch up to a brighter yellow, and then in this case you're going to be moving inward of what you've already painted, almost as if you're building up to highlights. But what you're actually trying to do is reinforce the yellow colour from a good base coat. I'm only doing the one panel here. This is me trying to work out the technique and how, the kind of effects that I wanted to go for. So again, just a nice simple stippling motion, only focusing on the one panel so that if I do make any mistakes it's not that big a deal, I can always go over it. And then I'm using a very light pale yellow, just to do some edge highlights around the edges of the panels, in and around any of the dents and any of the cuts, and anywhere else that feels appropriate. Just dragging the side of the brush along the edges. So there's that panel complete. I think it looks pretty good, and I'm going to do that all over the entire body. So that was just mid-progress. I end up also doing parts of the legs and the knees. And I've also started painting the pistons on the back. So let's move on to those and show you how I do those. So we want a base coat of the red. Now this red is actually really good. It's got, again, a high pigmentation and it covers really well. Just working around the casing of the cylinder. Now again, this doesn't need to be perfect. I think I probably did it a bit too well. I wanted a few more scratches and dents, metal showing through, but it's not that big a deal. It's behind the model, not a lot of people's going to see it anyway. Working up to the brighter colours, and then I'll be finishing off with an edge highlight of orange. Unfortunately, some of the footage for this got lost with some of the other models that I've been trying to paint recently. So painting the claw and things like that, unfortunately, are not going to be included in this. I couldn't go back and redo it either, but it's following the same principle, the same colours, base coat of red, a dark red, building up to lighter colours, and then edge highlighting with orange. You can see I've removed my glove at that point, just to stop any additional paint being transferred from my glove onto the nice yellow paint. And I'm going to apply exactly the same process of the yellow all over the main carcass of the backpack. You can see where I've applied also some copper and tin blitz metal colours to the exhaust pipes and whatever that globe thing is supposed to be. Notice that there was a light on the underside, so just putting an orange glow light within there. Same sort of principles, starting with a darker red, building up to an orange, and then using some wet blending techniques just to try and give the impression of a nice glow coming from within the light. when wet blending, the intention is to keep the colours that you're wanting to mix wet, hence the name wet blending. It's pretty simple, and you work the paints in together at whatever proportions you feel are correct, or you can even do trial and error, just keep going until you end up with the effect you want. Whatever you do, I mean, on this particular light you've got the metal grill that's running around it, so you need to try and emulate the same glow going around on all four sides. Not very easy to get to the back edges on this particular light, and what you don't want to end up doing is putting paint on work that you've already done on the other panels. Okay, so back to the base. I've undercoated it, primed it with a black paint. This wasn't a Citadel paint, the Chaos Black. Wish I had, because it's a much better paint. This came up kind of shiny. Just going to follow the same principles that I did with the main model. Put down a base coat of silver. It's kind of a wet brush technique rather than it being dry brushing. We'll wait for that to dry, and in the meantime start working on the stone. Just working up through some grey tones which are quite cold, up to some warmer tones to keep in tone with the rest of the base and how I wish to paint that. Working on the stonework, just adding some edge highlights, and then moving on to the main soil. So start with a dark brown, again working our way up. And again, it's almost like a dry brush technique, but with more paint on. And as you work up through the lighter colours, you tend to focus in regions that are away from the borders of other materials, almost as if there is shadow being created by the materials that are next to it. There's quite a few details on here. Obviously, you've got the skulls that we have applied. There were shell cases, and as you can see, a Space Marine helmet. Now this model is actually from the Prophecy of the Wolf box set. I'm not sure if the base is the same if you buy the orc separately, so I decided to paint this one as Space Wolves, primarily because I collect Space Wolves, and eventually I will get this Space Wolf army done and painted up. So that's the base colours done. Moving on to blue, and we're going to paint the helmet, and we're also going to apply all the other colours to the metals and then add things like grass tufts. If you want to know how I paint my Space Wolf colours, there will end up being a video of that when I return to painting them. So I've also put some bone whites over the skulls, and then washed them with a brown wash just to give a bit of extra tone. Highlighted up the space helmet, the Space Marine helmet, and then I go on to add all the extra little details. There we go. So there's the shell cases painted up as well. I've put some rust effects on the barbed wire. You can check out any of my other videos, like the Blood Bowl Troll, where I describe how I do the rust effect on there. There's no special paints other than a technical paint from Games Workshop. A few grass tufts stuck down, and then that's the base done. I could put other things on there like blood stains, but I'm not really a fan of doing that. I try to keep that to a minimum, putting things like blood stains on. So this is the orc finished. Like I said, unfortunately I lost a lot of the footage that I had, painting up all the wires and the hoses, sticking everything down. Really enjoyed this one. I hope you did too. Please like, subscribe, share with your friends, and hopefully anything I've missed in this video I'll pick up in a later video. Thanks for your time. Bye.